Listen up, gentlemen. If you think you know airport security, think again. In 2025, TSA isn't just confiscating items anymore. They're detaining travelers for hours, slapping them with massive fines, and in some cases, having them arrested. All thanks to completely ordinary things you've probably packed 100 times before. No drama until it happens to you. Let's walk through the 13 items that are landing seniors in serious trouble and how to stay in the clear. 13. High-proof alcohol violations. Let's start with something that might surprise you. That bottle of premium bourbon you picked up on your last trip. If it's over 140 proof, which is 70% alcohol by volume, TSA considers it a hazardous material. And here's the kicker. They're not just taking it away anymore. In March 2025, a 68-year-old retiree from Texas was detained for 3 hours at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. His crime? A bottle of Bacardi, 151 rum he'd forgotten, was in his carry-on from a Caribbean cruise. What should have been a simple confiscation turned into a full security investigation because the bottle wasn't properly declared and exceeded the alcohol limit. The rules are strict now. Alcohol between 24% and 70% ABV is allowed in carry-on, but only in containers of 3.4 ounces or less, and it must follow the 3-1-1 liquid rule. Anything over 70% ABV is completely prohibited in both carry-on and checked luggage. Period. But here's what's really catching people off guard. Even properly allowed, alcohol can get you detained if TSA suspects you're trying to hide it, or if you have too much of it. They're trained to look for patterns that suggest smuggling or intent to consume during flight. My advice? If you're bringing alcohol home from a trip, ship it instead. The hassle and potential detention just aren't worth it. And if you must fly with it, make sure you know the exact alcohol content and follow every rule to the letter. 12. Food items with liquid content. This one's going to sound ridiculous, but hear me out. That jar of your wife's favorite honey or the homemade jam your daughter made, these innocent food items are now major red flags for TSA. In January 2025, a 72-year-old grandfather from Ohio was pulled aside for secondary screening that lasted over an hour. His offense? A large jar of peanut butter he was bringing to his grandkids. The creamy consistency triggered alarms in the new scanning equipment, and because it exceeded the 3.4-ounce liquid limit, TSA treated it as a potential security threat. Here's what you need to understand. TSA doesn't just look at whether something is technically a liquid. They look at consistency, viscosity, and whether it could potentially hide prohibited substances. Peanut butter, honey, maple syrup, salsa, and even thick soups are all treated as liquids under the 3-1-1 rule. Canned foods are particularly problematic now. If TSA can see liquids sloshing around inside the can on their X-ray machines, they'll flag it for inspection. And that inspection can take a long time, especially if you're carrying multiple cans or large containers. The solution is simple but requires planning. If you're bringing food gifts or specialty items, pack them in your checked luggage. If they must go in carry-on, make sure each container is 3.4 ounces or less and fits in your quart-sized liquids bag. Better yet, consider shipping these items ahead of time or buying them at your destination. 11. Tech chargers and electronics. Now, this one really gets my blood boiling because it affects something we all carry: our phone chargers and electronic devices. TSA has become incredibly suspicious of anything with wires, batteries, or unusual configurations. A 69-year-old veteran from Arizona learned this the hard way in February 2025. He was detained for 2 hours because his older model laptop charger had an unusual design that TSA agents hadn't seen before. They suspected it might be a disguised weapon or explosive device. 2 hours of his life wasted because technology moved faster than TSA training. The problem is that TSA agents are now trained to be suspicious of any electronic device that looks different from what they're used to seeing. Older chargers, foreign-made electronics, or devices with multiple cables can all trigger extended screening. But it gets worse. Some of the newer fast-charging power banks and wireless charging pads have configurations that look suspicious on X-ray machines. If the agent can't immediately identify what your device is, you're getting pulled aside for manual inspection. Here's my recommendation. Stick with name brand, recognizable electronics when you travel. Keep all your chargers and cables organized in a clear bag, so agents can see exactly what they are. And if you have an older or unusual device, consider upgrading before your next trip. It's cheaper than missing a flight. 10. Undeclared medical equipment. Gentlemen, if you're dealing with health issues, and let's face it, many of us are at our age, you need to be extra careful about how you handle medical equipment at airports. In April 2025, a 74-year-old man with sleep apnea was detained for over 3 hours at Chicago O'Hare. His CPAP machine, which he'd traveled with dozens of times before, suddenly became a problem because new TSA protocols required additional documentation that he didn't have. What should have been a routine screening turned into a nightmare that caused him to miss his connection and spend an extra night in Chicago. The issue is that TSA has tightened rules around medical devices, especially anything with batteries, pumps, or electrical components. Oxygen concentrators, nebulizers, insulin pumps, and even some blood pressure monitors now require special handling and documentation. But here's what's really frustrating. The rules vary depending on which TSA agent you encounter and which airport you're flying through. Some agents are well trained on medical equipment, others aren't. Some airports have dedicated medical screening areas, others don't. If you travel with medical equipment, here's what you absolutely must do. Get a letter from your doctor explaining what the device is and why you need it. Carry copies of prescriptions for any medications. Arrive at the airport extra early to allow time for additional screening. And most importantly, declare your medical equipment up front. Don't try to hide it or hope it goes unnoticed. 9. Fake or replica weapons. This category is expanding faster than you can imagine, and it's catching a lot of grandfathers off guard. That toy gun you bought for your grandson, the replica Civil War sword from the museum gift shop, or even that realistic-looking toy lightsaber. They're all potential detention triggers now. A 67-year-old grandfather from Florida found this out the hard way in May 2025. He was detained for 4 hours and nearly arrested because of a toy pistol he'd bought for his grandson's birthday. Even though it was clearly marked as a toy and had an orange tip, TSA treated it as a potential weapon because of its realistic appearance. The problem is that TSA agents are trained to err on the side of caution. If something looks like a weapon, even remotely, they're going to treat it as one until they can prove otherwise. And that proving process can take hours. This includes items you might not even think of as weapons. Realistic toy knives, replica military equipment, even some belt buckles that look like brass knuckles can all trigger detention. TSA has expanded their definition of replica weapons to include almost anything that could be mistaken for the real thing. My advice is simple. Don't pack anything that even remotely resembles a weapon. If you're buying gifts or souvenirs that could be questionable, ship them home instead. It's not worth the risk of detention, missed flights, and potential criminal charges. 8. Fireworks and explosives. You'd think this one would be obvious, but apparently it's not. TSA is still finding fireworks, flares, and other explosive materials in carry-on bags, and they're treating these discoveries very seriously. In June 2025, a 71-year-old man from Nevada was arrested, not just detained, arrested, for having leftover 4th of July sparklers in his carry-on bag. He'd completely forgotten they were there from a family barbecue months earlier. Those innocent sparklers resulted in criminal charges, a $5,000 fine, and a permanent flag on his travel record. Here's what you need to understand. TSA doesn't care if you forgot about these items or if they seem harmless to you. Any explosive material, no matter how small or seemingly innocent, is treated as a serious security threat. This includes fireworks, flares, gunpowder, ammunition, and even some types of camping fuel. The consequences are severe. We're talking about federal charges, massive fines, and potential jail time. Plus, you'll be flagged in the system for additional screening on every future flight. Before you pack, do a thorough search of your luggage, especially if you use the same bags for camping, hunting, or outdoor activities. Check every pocket, every compartment, every corner. If you find anything questionable, leave it at home or dispose of it properly before heading to the airport. 7. Smart luggage with non-removable batteries. This is a newer problem that's catching a lot of travelers off guard. Those high-tech suitcases with built-in charging ports and GPS tracking seemed like a great idea when you bought them, but now they're causing major headaches at airports. A 66-year-old businessman from California learned this lesson in July 2025 when he was detained for over 2 hours at LAX. His expensive smart suitcase had a non-removable battery, which TSA now considers a fire hazard. He was forced to either abandon his luggage or miss his flight. He chose to miss the flight and had to buy a new suitcase at the airport. The issue is that lithium batteries in luggage pose a fire risk, especially in the cargo hold where crew members can't access them if something goes wrong. Airlines and TSA have cracked down hard on smart luggage that doesn't allow you to remove the battery. If you own smart luggage, check whether the battery can be easily removed. If it can't, you might want to consider replacing it before your next trip. If the battery is removable, make sure you know how to take it out quickly and carry it with you in the cabin. Don't assume that, because you've traveled with your smart luggage before, it will be okay this time. Rules are changing rapidly, and enforcement is getting stricter. 6. Undeclared large medical devices. I know I touched on medical equipment earlier, but large medical devices deserve their own discussion because they're causing some of the longest detentions we're seeing. A 73-year-old diabetic from Michigan was detained for 5 hours in August 2025 because his insulin pump triggered alarms and he didn't have proper documentation. The TSA agents weren't familiar with his particular model of pump, and without a doctor's letter explaining what it was, they treated it as a potential explosive device. Here's the reality. TSA agents see hundreds of passengers every day, but they don't see every type of medical device. If you have something they're not familiar with, they're going to err on the side of caution and detain you until they can figure out what it is. The solution requires preparation. Get a detailed letter from your doctor explaining every piece of medical equipment you travel with. Include photos if possible. Carry copies of all prescriptions. Research TSA's medical equipment policies before you travel, and print out the relevant pages to show agents if needed. Most importantly, declare your medical equipment up front. Don't try to hide it or hope it goes unnoticed. Tell the TSA agent at the beginning of screening that you have medical equipment and show them your documentation immediately. 5. Large quantities of powders. This one surprises a lot of people because we're talking about completely innocent items like protein powder, pancake mix, or even baby formula. But TSA has become extremely suspicious of any powder in quantities over 12 ounces. A 70-year-old retiree from Texas was detained for 3 hours in September 2025 because he was carrying a large container of protein powder in his carry-on. Even though it was clearly labeled and in its original container, TSA agents spent hours testing it to make sure it wasn't an explosive material. The problem is that many explosive materials look like innocent powders, and TSA's detection equipment can't always tell the difference immediately, so they err on the side of caution and subject large quantities of powder to extensive testing. This affects more items than you might think. Pancake mix, flour, protein powder, powdered milk. Even some medications in powder form can all trigger extended screening if you're carrying more than 12 ounces. If you need to travel with powders, keep them in their original containers with clear labeling. Better yet, pack them in checked luggage where they won't trigger the same level of scrutiny. And if you must carry them in your carry-on, arrive at the airport extra early to allow time for additional screening. 4. Vape devices in wrong location. Even if you don't vape yourself, you might be carrying these devices for a family member or friend. And if you put them in the wrong place, you're looking at serious detention time. A 68-year-old grandfather from Oregon was detained for 4 hours in October 2025 because he'd packed his son's vape device in his checked luggage. He didn't know that vape devices must be carried in the cabin due to fire risk. TSA treated it as a serious safety violation and subjected him to extensive questioning about whether he was trying to smuggle prohibited items. The rule is simple but strict. All vape devices, e-cigarettes, and related equipment must be in your carry-on luggage. They cannot go in checked bags under any circumstances. This is because the lithium batteries in these devices can overheat and cause fires in the cargo hold. But here's where it gets tricky. Even in carry-on, these devices can trigger additional screening. TSA agents are trained to look for modifications or unusual configurations that might indicate the device has been altered for illegal purposes. If you're carrying vape devices, keep them in their original packaging if possible. Don't try to hide them or pack them with other electronics where they might be overlooked. Declare them up front and be prepared to explain what they are and why you're carrying them. 3. Lithium battery violations. This is becoming one of the biggest sources of detention for travelers, and it's particularly problematic for our generation because we often don't fully understand the complex rules around these batteries. A 75-year-old retiree from Pennsylvania was detained for 6 hours in November 2025 because he had a large power bank in his checked luggage. He didn't realize that lithium batteries over a certain size must be carried in the cabin, not checked. TSA treated it as a serious safety violation and subjected him to extensive questioning about his travel plans and intentions. Here's what you need to know. Lithium batteries are everywhere in our devices now. Your phone, tablet, laptop, power bank, even some medical devices all contain lithium batteries. And TSA has very specific rules about how these can be transported. Power banks and spare lithium batteries must always be in your carry-on luggage, never in checked bags. Batteries over 100 watt-hours require airline approval. Damaged or recalled batteries are completely prohibited. The problem is that many of us don't know the watt-hour rating of our devices, and TSA agents are getting stricter about checking these specifications. If you can't prove your battery meets the requirements, they'll confiscate it and potentially detain you for further questioning. Before you travel, check the watt-hour rating on all your electronic devices. If you're not sure, contact the manufacturer or leave the device at home. It's not worth the risk of detention and missed flights. 2. Prohibited aerosol cans. This category has expanded significantly in 2025, and it's catching a lot of travelers off guard. We're not just talking about obvious items like spray paint or compressed air. TSA is now flagging many common household aerosols as potential security threats. A 69-year-old man from Idaho was detained for 5 hours in December 2024 because he had a can of WD-40 in his carry-on bag. He was planning to fix a squeaky door at his daughter's house, but TSA treated the lubricant as a potential weapon because it's flammable and under pressure. The rules around aerosols are complex and constantly changing. Some are allowed in limited quantities, others are completely prohibited. Flammable aerosols, compressed air, and anything that could be used as a weapon are all banned from carry-on luggage. This includes items you might not think of as problematic. Certain deodorants, hairsprays, cooking sprays, and cleaning products can all trigger detention if they exceed size limits or contain prohibited ingredients. The safest approach is to avoid packing aerosols in your carry-on altogether. If you need these items at your destination, buy them when you arrive or pack them in checked luggage following the airline's specific guidelines. 1. Firearms and weapons. And here we are at number 1, the big one that can land you in federal prison. Despite decades of security screening, people are still trying to bring firearms and weapons through TSA checkpoints, and the consequences are more severe than ever. In January 2025, a 72-year-old veteran from Virginia was arrested and charged with federal crimes for having a loaded handgun in his carry-on bag. He claimed he forgot it was there, but TSA doesn't care about your intentions. He's now facing up to 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. Here's the harsh reality. There is no excuse for bringing a weapon to an airport checkpoint. None. TSA has heard every story, every excuse, every explanation. They don't care if you forgot, if it was an accident, or if you have a concealed carry permit. Bringing a weapon to a checkpoint is a federal crime, period. This includes obvious weapons like guns and knives, but also items you might not think of as weapons. Multi-tools with blades, tactical pens, certain belt buckles, Even some walking canes can be considered weapons if they have sharp or pointed components. The consequences are severe and life-changing. We're talking about federal criminal charges, massive fines, potential prison time, and a permanent criminal record. Plus, you'll be banned from flying and flagged for additional screening for the rest of your life. Before you pack, do a thorough search of every bag, every pocket, every compartment. If you find anything that could remotely be considered a weapon, leave it at home. It's not worth destroying your life over. The bottom line. Gentlemen, I've given you the straight truth about what's happening at airports in 2025. TSA isn't playing games anymore. They're detaining people for hours, imposing massive fines, and in some cases, pursuing criminal charges for violations that used to result in simple confiscation. The key to avoiding these problems is preparation and knowledge. Know the rules before you pack. When in doubt, leave it out. Arrive at the airport early to allow time for additional screening. And always be honest with TSA agents about what you're carrying. Remember, these agents are just doing their jobs, and they're trained to prioritize safety over convenience. Getting angry or argumentative will only make things worse. Stay calm, be respectful, and cooperate fully with any requests for additional screening. Your travel experience doesn't have to be a nightmare. With proper preparation and knowledge of these rules, you can avoid detention, fines, and missed flights. Take a few minutes before each trip to review what you're packing and make sure everything complies with current TSA regulations. Safe travels, and remember, it's better to be overprepared than detained. If this information helped you avoid a potential TSA nightmare, hit that like button and share it with your fellow travelers. And don't forget to subscribe for more no-nonsense travel advice that could save you time, money, and a whole lot of headaches. Until next time, travel smart and stay safe out there.